people! Thanks for joining me for another edition of Fixing Headstocks. I'm Scott, and this is a beautiful Gibson Hummingbird. The headstock's broken off for the second time, and it's partially due to these ginormous Grover tuners that are far too heavy to be on an acoustic guitar. The headstock weighs more than the rest of the guitar itself. Just exaggerating, but this is the second time this has broken. First time they went and painted it a little bit black on there. They masked it off, painted it black, and did a real good job of spraying lacquer on it. But this time it's going to take more than just glue. Yeah. Yep, this time it's going to take glue, carbon fiber, plain weave fabric, 2-part epoxy resin, a little bit of glue boost, maybe a little polyurethane, some shellac, lacquer, and whatever else it might need. But first we got to get rid of these giant Grover tuners. Absolute monstrosities. And I don't know if you could tell, but this guitar used to have a cherry red color, and he had it in a dining room window for a couple of years with its back to the window, and the entire back of the guitar has turned this like Van Dyke brown color. There's only little remnants of the cherry red here and there. Okay, this is what happens when people try to fix a neck and they don't have the right tools and stuff. I had to dig out a flat washer, 3 hardware store lock washers, the half moon washer, and I mean, just look how compressed the wood is there. I might have to bore it out a little bit with the StewMac Truss Rod Rescue Kit. Missing from the picture is the one flat washer that was right underneath the brass truss rod nut. Acorn nut, that is. Man. Please, guys, if you have a broken neck or a neck that doesn't work, consult a professional. Well, Tight Bond Originals made a rare appearance now. Before I went into this segment here, I also got a whole bunch of it down the length of the neck. Like between frets 2 and 5, there was a big crack on the back of the neck. And I got a whole bunch of Tight Bond to squeeze in there, which is kind of cool. And then it indexed together real nicely. I'm going to use a waxed caul over the headstock veneer. Remember, I tried to use it in the last Fixing Headstocks video and it wouldn't fit because that Gibson Les Paul Studio had a 46 millimeter wide neck at the nut. This one's kind of more normal, 43 millimeters. Actually, in the mid 70s, they made some pretty comfortable skinny necks. Not just on the Hummingbirds, but also on the SGs and Les Pauls. All right, the glue up went good. I started dropping in black tinted CA glue, and I fitted 2 truss rod rescue washers down inside of here, and I checked the neck relief. I'm looking ahead a time at how the neck is going to set up before I do the carbon fiber wrap. And what I'm seeing is that there's way too much relief in the neck. I can get the relief out by tightening this real good, But I'd like to get the guitar neck in a state where it's pretty much flat before I wrap it without, forcing too much pressure down on this truss rod here. Let me show you these truss rod washers. These big, there's two of them in there, stacked end to end. They're big, long suckers. Anyways, let's look at the back side. There's this one spot that goes all the way through. There's a missing piece of wood, and it's open to the cavity here. So I'm gonna maybe put a piece of tape down in this side and drop in a little gel epoxy down in here to fill this all up before I start carving away. But it's straight. It's got the right alignment. I like that. And there's a couple little things to do first. I'm going to heat press the neck, let it set for a few days, and then see if I can get that neck completely flat, if not a little bit into a back bow with slight pressure on the truss rod nut. Then I'll carve away and wrap it with carbon fiber. Alright, now I'm going at it with this curved eraser file. It kind of has a flat surface out towards the edge. It's rounded in the middle, and it has a little bit of a nice flat area that I'm using there. I'll use this for a little while, then I'll go to a regular file. Then I'll start hitting it with some sandpaper. Pretty aggressive, 120 grit at first. We're going to need to do a little painting. Going to need to do a little refinishing. Right now we're just trying to get it level. Here's some 400 grit sandpaper right here. Just trying to not to sand through or leave any deep impressions in the headstock. Now a little 3M maroon Scotch-Brite. It's about the equivalent of 320 grit sandpaper. I wanted to hit the entire headstock with this grit. That way, first I'll get a little naphtha to clean, and then I'll wipe on some Glue Boost Fill and Finish Ultra Thin with some Glue Dry Accelerate-Tol. Couple coats of that. Little drop fills here and there. Sometimes there's some little pinholes you gotta fill in. Want to get it smooth as a baby's bottom. You can tell when you've got it smooth. It goes on really nice. A wipe with the Accelerate-Tol. A few more wipes. Right there's a good wipe right there. I've never seen a wipe that good. I'm getting pretty good at wiping. 3M maroon. Naphtha to clean. We're ready for some black. I'm going to mix some Zinsser spray shellac with a little bit of Mixol and a little bit of India ink. And I must have had a little too much of the Mixol because it stayed tacky for 2 or 3 days. Well, here it is. It goes down. The color match was really good. The Mixol's a little bit of a gray black, and the India ink is a little bit of a bluish black. So the two of them together hit the spot. Well, now I decided to go ahead and use these drill bits that have a positive stop to them, and I measured it out at 40 thousandths of an inch. So I'm going to create about 25 little craters all around the area that I want to remove material. It's an indexing drill bit, that's what it is. I'll rasp away and razor file away until I can't see those little craters anymore. And then I'll be certain that I'll have the proper depth for 3 layers of plain weave carbon fiber fabric. The carbon fiber fabric that I have here is about 10 thousandths of an inch thick. So 10 times 3 is 30 thou, plus all the epoxy and fluff. It leaves me just an eyelash under the final thickness that I want to be, which is great because that's the goal. Once tomorrow comes and I start leveling off the carbon fiber, don't want to remove a lot of the fabric. It would be counterintuitive to put stuff on and then remove it, because the more you remove, the more weaker you make it. So the goal is to get it just under and then fill in what's left. We'll top it off with another round or a second day of epoxy, the 2-part West Systems, and I use the 655 thickened. That's tomorrow. But for today, what I do, once I get everything where I want it, I use this thick scraper to remove the lacquer. And then I have a little muslin template that I use to cut the proper size for the carbon fiber. I also use ceramic scissors, which were suggested by Joe Glazer. He developed this technique and shared it with luthiers at different conventions, and also on the Luth Group interview with Ian Davlin. You can see all those interviews. He interviews a lot of famous guys, well, famous in our industry, and it'd be a real shame if you're interested in this type of work or doing this type of work for money if you didn't check those videos out. So join up to the Luth Group. It's only $12, $13 a month. I pitch in $20 because I'm there for the humor. There's a lot of funny stuff going on there. Anyways, I'm going to use the West Systems 105 resin with the 206 hardener. It's 5 parts resin to 1 part hardener. This is the thin stuff. This is the stuff that's great for wicking into the fabric. Tomorrow I'll use the thickened. And the 655 thickened, you use equal parts. I got the garbage can right down below and a towel just in case something drips down, but I lucked out because nothing dripped. That mahogany wood soaks that resin in like it's really thirsty, like a sponge almost. All right, layer 1, the moment of truth. Now, it doesn't have to overhang, it doesn't have to be 100%. I was actually shooting for to get it within 1/8 of an inch to 1/16 of an inch around the perimeter, not overlapping the perimeter, but inside of the perimeter. But it ended up shifting a little bit, and you'll see in tomorrow's shot. All right, we'll mop on a little bit more, and then we'll apply layer number 2. This stuff, once you wrap it, it really soaks all the way through. You don't want too much squeeze out. It's a pain in the ass to wipe or clean up the next day. Layer number 3. In the past, I've always done 2 layers, but I was talking to Ellen Pachter, who did a YouTube video on this last month, And he said he does 5. Said he ends up removing a lot of it, but I thought, well, if he's doing 5, I got to start doing 3. The more the merrier. So wax paper as a barrier between the adhesive and the exercise tubing. I like the yellow. Yellow is super light resistance. And I'm not wrapping very hard. I'm not even like putting much stretch to it at all. Just barely a teeny bit of stretching. And I wait 8 hours to unveil it. So I did this in the same day. I let it sit for 8 hours. Then here's the big reveal. I will wait till tomorrow, though, to do the carving and the application of the thickened 655 two-part epoxy. I kind of like the way this looks. It's exactly what I wanted. Nice and smooth. The wax paper didn't stick all that bad. There's a little bit of a waxy substance left behind, but that's just the way this epoxy is. It kind of has a greasy... Here come the lawnmowers. All right, we'll tidy up a bit and then we'll get back to work on it tomorrow. And here we are, next day. I'm cleaning it up with a little naphtha on a toothbrush. I already sanded and scraped and got it so that it doesn't stand proud of the perimeter. And this is the 655 thickened 2-part epoxy from West Systems. It has a thickener built in. So now I'll start filing away with the razor file, and you'll notice here how easy it looks to shape, and that's because it is. It's kind of like grating Parmesan cheese, and stuff is just so easy to shape. That's why I like it. It's even softer than mahogany in a way, the way that it shapes anyways. Stick your spaghetti right under there and get you a nice little shaving of some cheese. I know people that like cheese a lot. They're like cheeseaholics. Me, not so much cheese. Now it's going to take a little glue boost for filling, teeny little voids. So I'm not done with the filling and filing. This goes on for the better part of a day before I'm satisfied. Before I'm ready to paint it black, that is. Naphtha to clean. Now it's looking pretty slick. I think I'll get out the polyurethane. So this is the punching of the numbers. Since I'm going to a jet black finish, we'll need to punch those numbers down in there, and because there's a thick coat of lacquer over the numbers now, and the numbers are not recessed, they're just ink stamped or ink rolled numbers. Ian Davlin told me I could heat up the punch with the soldering pen, and that would bite into the lacquer a little better. He was right. If you heat it up and then punch it, it goes in deeper. And then I took a little rat tail file and etched out the bottom of each number and that first letter A, and cleaned out the chippy lacquer. There was a little bit of shattered lacquer down in there. So I cleaned that out, made it deeper, and then took it down, sprayed it black. But see the pedestal there? I've got that peg leg holding the front under the headstock, and then I've got the ass end of the workstation under that rail. Before I spray it, I want to mask off the entire body and most of the neck. I use a 13-gallon kitchen bag and some of this stretch wrap or cellophane when you're packing up your moving boxes. Well, these are the two stamping sets that I have. This is a 6mm or 1/4 inch set that I used just there. S number and letter. I don't know why it says that like that, but then I have this one. It's an 1/8 inch 36-piece Pittsburgh. Maybe got this from Harbor Freight. This would be good for the made in USA, but I'm not bothering with this one. We all know Gibsons are made in the USA. Let's unmask it and see how it looks. Kind of reminds me of Christmas Day as a child, unwrapping my presents. Numbers look good. I think I'll leave the masking tape on the fretboard for now until I get the clear finish going. Or finished. Well, this is how it looked fresh off the paint window. We sprayed the coat of black, and then we sprayed 2 coats of I guess a flat lacquer right out of a rattle can. Now I'm wiping on some Glue Boost Fill and Finish Ultra Thin with a foam brush. I got a piece of wax paper wrapped around the foam, and then some paper towels doubled up, maybe even triple layers of paper towels. And the wax paper keeps the fill and finish from soaking into the sponge or the foam on the end of the brush. Now I'm wiping a saturated paper towel. I sprayed it with the accelerator over by the fart fan. And I do about 8 layers per side, accelerating in between each application. After 8, I do a wet or a dry sand with 600 grit free cut sandpaper. You have to clean the sandpaper and change it out quite often. It dulls pretty quick. Naphtha to clean. Better clean it again. Accelerate once, twice, 3 times a glue boost. Now I'm going to do 2 more final wipes before wet sanding with 1500 grit wet dry sandpaper. 2K and 3000 Trizact. Here's that 15 Hun. Now sometimes, depending on how old the guitar is and how ugly I want to make it look, you know, it doesn't need to look brand new. It's a 50-year-old guitar. Actually, it's a 51 years old this year. So the way I kind of finish it by making it look old is after those 2 wet sands with the sandpaper and Trizact, I wipe it and polish it and buff it with a plastic polish and some Meguiar's cleaner wax. Normally I would buff it with a heavy cut compound if I really wanted to get those sandpaper scratches out. But in this case I want to leave them in. Makes it look old. I even sanded through the very tip of the headstock. You'll see it when I flip it back over. But there's a little sand through where you can see the wood like it's been bumped a couple times or something. Kind of looks good. I also have a little defect right here around the curve by where my thumb is right there, in front of the nut. And that curve on the headstock, it's kind of chewed up right there. I went ahead and left that because it's an old guitar. I wanted to kind of like make it look like it's been on a hanger that's eaten the finish away or whatever. For some reason, the truss rod cover, the Gibson style, doesn't fit. You know, remember at the beginning he had an Epiphone style truss rod cover on this guitar, but I can make it work by filing away that little part of the bell, the bottom of the bell. We're going to use the D'Addario XS strings. These are the expensive babies. They're good. Phosphor bronze, 12 through 53. I like to put a little bend next to the ball. That way I make sure that it wraps around the front of the bridge plate. And then I do my little over-under around the post. I go over the wrap. The first goes over, and the second and third go under. Get about 3-4 wraps on the first 2 strings, 4 or 5 wraps on the second 2. I know I do it backwards too. I call the low E string the first string because I always string the guitar with the 6th string first. Well, the neck is nice and straight. 4/1000 of an inch relief right here in the middle. It sounds pretty good too. It's a good strummer. Appreciate you guys hanging around this week. Hope to see you around soon. Catch you later.